In response to Miss Monopoly, the Monopoly rehash that discriminates against men in favour of women, I present to you MANOPOLY, the board game that advantages men over women. This video describes the layout of the game, the rules, and how to play. The object of the game is for the women's to acquire all of men's property and endeavours, empty their bank balances, and to smash the patriarchy. But it won't be easy, as men have the advantage. Before commencing the game, you will need to choose a token. The 8 traditional Monopoly tokens have been segregated by the 2 genders that actually exist into 2 groups of 4. The new male tokens see the battleship replaced with the speedboat, the racing car has been upgraded to a Ford Mustang, the boot becomes the PlayStation controller, and the top hat is now the power saw. For the ladies, the thimble becomes the sandwich toaster, the Scottish Terrier makes way for the hippopotamus, the wheelbarrow is now the pair of problem glasses, and the iron, well, there's no need to change that one. Trans players are allowed to be whatever token they gender identify as. Now let's have an overview of the board. The board is largely made up of male-dominated areas. However, 4 female safe spaces are included on the board. In the interests of being inclusive and diverse, there is also a trans space. Rules governing female safe spaces. Men are permitted to enter the safe spaces if they so choose. However, a man can elect to jump the space and not be counted in his roll of the dice, as if the space didn't even exist. As a result, men can circuit the board faster than women's, passing go more often, and thus collect $200 more often. Now for a more detailed tour of the MANOPOLY board. In MANOPOLY, women's go first, not because of chivalry, but because casual sexism and all of that. If more than one women's is playing, then the women's with the biggest jubblies goes first. Starting at go, the women's rolls the dice to begin play, and even though there are 2 dice, she somehow manages to roll a 1 and moves forward accordingly. If unpurchased, she has the option to buy the pool hall for the price directly below the title. If the pool hall is already owned, she must pay the owner the $2 detailed below. The owner can choose to forego the fee in return for sexual favours. However, the women's cannot retrospectively reinterpret the offer as indecent assault. Now it's the man's turn, and he rolls a 5. This would normally land him in the kitchen, but as is his goddamn given male right, he elects to skip over to auto parts, which he purchases for $300. The women's also rolls a 5 and joins the man on auto parts, but as he is now the owner, she must pay him $10 for him to weld her muffler. Each player continues to take turns in a clockwise direction if more than 2 players. Now that we have established gameplay, we continue on exploring the board spaces and what particular rules apply to particular spaces. As we move forward, we pass by the jail, but in MANOPOLY, men don't go to prison, just the women's. Strategically placed either side of the prison is the noise factory and the fart house, places where men can drop in and have some fun. Flipping the board around for a better view, we come to the inventing stuff space. For men, this operates similar to free parking, but if a woman lands on this space, she must go back to the kitchen and await her next turn. Passing by the laundry safe space, we come to our first community chest. In MANOPOLY, community chest cards will be financial in nature. Chance cards will be social and cultural. Both community chest cards and chance cards are gender segregated, and the cards are coloured blue and pink to give direction to men and women accordingly. For example, a community chest card might read, "You completed 1.5 hours of overtime, collect $50. Or, surveillance video showed you pissing off to the salon at 3:45, repay your employer $40. A chance card might read, "Her parents are coming over, move forward 3 spaces to avoid them." Or, "One of your cats needs a tarot card reading, move forward to the kitchen. If you pass go, collect $200. In MANOPOLY, the women's must skip the golf course. Whilst men recognise that women's can become fine golfers, they just don't fucking want you there. Moving on, we arrive at the final 2 female safe spaces. The waterworks is situated close to the whinging room for obvious reasons. To date, no man has elected to not skip over these two safe spaces. We then come to the go to jail space. If a man lands on this space, he can choose a women's at random and send them to jail on the strength of an accusation only. If a women's lands on the go to jail space, she must go directly to jail without passing go and without collecting $200. Unlike traditional Monopoly, where a prisoner must wait 3 turns to get out of jail, a women's only has to wait 1 turn, because after all, she's a women's. Now we come to the home stretch, but arguably the most treacherous part of the board for the women's. The unsafe space, where God only knows what could happen, and the trans sports arena. Men who land on the trans sports arena receive $100 prize money for winning women's weightlifting events by claiming to identify as a woman. Women who land on the trans sports arena space receive nothing because they entered male events claiming to identify as a man and got utterly hammered on the sports field. And finally, we come to the last 2 spaces, but most treacherous spaces on the board. The man error space. If a woman lands on this space, she collects $500 from every man in the game. If a man lands on this space, he must pay $500 to the next female whose turn it would be, and to surrender to her the title to his most expensive purchase. In effect, he loses the house to her. The final space is the Holy Grail, the patriarchy space. The patriarchy space is not for sale, it must be won. By default, male players already own the patriarchy, and so they can land on the space without consequence, other than being conscripted to die in the next war and every other negative consequence of being born male. Any woman who lands on this space receives 1 of 3 cards. The first warning, stern warning card, the second warning, stern backhander card, and should she land on it a 3rd time, the elimination card. Women who receive the elimination card are eliminated from the game, even if they threaten to cut off contact with the children. The game ends when either a man has created a MANOPOLY by eliminating all women's from the game, in which case any remaining men are declared equal victors, or women's can successfully acquire a monopoly of ownership of every male space on the board. This does not quite win her the game though, as she must then land on the patriarchy space to complete the smashing of the patriarchy. Additional rules. To raise cash, players may sell their assets. Assets must be sold at a 10% profit if being purchased by a women's, and a 10% discount if being purchased by a man. To celebrate the release of the MANOPOLY board game video, I've created the Gary Orsum MANOPOLY t-shirt, available at my Teespring store for a strictly limited time until November 1st, so don't miss out. Link in the description below. Thanks for watching everyone.